Here's the question today. What is culture? What is culture? It's a really hard question to answer because culture is very large and is very complicated. So what we're going to try to do is I'm going to do what we call an interactive lecture. I'll be asking you questions. I expect you to give me answers. There are no wrong answers, so don't be shy. And we'll use your answers to kind of build a model of culture and see if that helps us to understand what we're talking about. So let me give you a situation to help you. Let's say you're at a shopping center or a shopping mall somewhere, and you have a small child with you, maybe a nephew, a niece, or a friend's child or something, and all of a sudden that kid says to you, "Look at those people over there. What's wrong with them?" And you say, "They're from a different culture." My question is, how did you know they were from a different culture? What did you see? What did you perceive that tells you some person is a different culture than you? Make it very specific, okay? So speak differently means what?
Speak another language,
Okay.
have an accent.
Yes, stop there. Language or accent. I think that's one of the easiest things for us to know, right? Remember what I told you last week? When you go to classes here or when you go shopping or go anywhere, nobody knows that you're not from California until you open your mouth, right? Because you look exactly like everybody else in California, right? We have 6 million Asians in California, right? So if you're from China or Korea or Japan, you look just like everybody else in California, right? So, all right, language, accent. Those are two really important markers of culture. What else? Who else has something?
Physical appearance.
Physical appearance. Mm-hmm. Appearance. And I'm going to ask you more about that. What exactly do you mean?
Clothing.
Ah, well, that's different. That's not what I thought you were talking about, okay? What did I think she was talking about when she said physical appearance?
Skin color, hair color.
Color of skin, eyes, and hair, right? Which, you know, you're all being very polite, but the word for that is race, okay? That's exactly what I thought she was talking about. So then when she said clothing, I went, oh, that's different. But clothing is also an important consideration, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, okay? Good, we've got a few ideas. Let's have a few more. What other things do you use to recognize people as being from a different culture? Can you think of anything else?
Greetings.
Greetings, yes, good. We sometimes call it greeting behavior, right? In your culture, what do people do when they greet each other?
Bow.
Bow? And do they say something? Because in different places, people say different things, right? What do Americans say often? How are you doing? And do they listen to the answer? No, because it's not a real question. They don't care how you are doing, right? The same in Japan, right? Genki desu ne. Are you healthy, right? They don't care whether you're healthy or not. They just ask that question, right? In some parts of China, they say, have you eaten, right? And you always have to say yes. They don't care whether you're hungry or not. It's just a greeting, right? So that's the verbal part. The nonverbal part would be bowing. What else do people do non-verbally to greet each other?
Handshakes.
Handshakes, yeah. Does everybody shake hands? Who doesn't shake hands? Men shake hands. Women choose to shake hands, but men do shake hands. So again, culture could be associated with men in the culture or women in the culture, right? Okay, give me another idea. How do you decide if somebody's from another culture? Well, all of these things that we're talking about here are behavior. So that's what I'm trying to get you to do, is give me some specific behaviors that you see differences in, okay? I'm surprised you guys haven't said it. Most classes immediately, the first thing they say is food, right? Yeah, food. It's more than food, isn't it? It's not only what you eat, it's how you eat it, and it might even be when you eat it, right? Any other way you could tell by watching people that they were a different group than you are in? What else makes people different from each other?
Habits?
What kind of habits? You're right, but you have to be more specific. Tell me a specific idea, right?
The way they dress and the way they talk.
Yeah, can you be more specific? You know, we put clothing over here, and I put it over here for a reason, right? Does clothing really tell you what a person's culture is? Look at you in this room. Your clothing is all the same. And by the way, it's the same of most people in the world today, right? Almost every country you go to, there's jeans, there's athletic shoes, there's t-shirts, you know, the same kind of stuff people wear everywhere. So is clothing a marker of culture? It's actually because of the international electronic media. Blame it on MTV. Now, clothing can sometimes tell us about culture. When does it tell us about culture? Say it again.
When they are wearing specific, for example, when you see a Hindi, that is the kind of traditional dressing. You can identify.
And why does she wear that?
Religious.
Religion, yes. Okay. So I'm going to put religion over here. So we're almost getting there. Okay. So it works with your example of India, Hindu, okay? It works with that. It might work with a few other religions, okay? But that's not the reason most people wear a traditional costume. What is the reason most people wear a traditional costume? A certain occasion, yes, okay? So, if we do it this way, if we say ritual occasion, okay, then we can say clothing is important, right? Haru, how old are you? 18. So in 2 years, you're going to have a special ritual occasion, right? When you're 20 years old, she will wear a kimono for that special occasion in Japan where she becomes an adult, right? I think you're an adult now. But ritual means just exactly that, a special time set aside, right? It doesn't necessarily mean more than that, right? I forgot in Korea when do you wear the hanbok? Is that what it's called? The hanbok? When do they wear that? New Year's Day. So again, a special occasion, okay? So do you think this tells us enough about somebody to judge them as a different culture? Yeah, it tells us quite a bit, doesn't it? But notice I put these things over here. Outside of this list, I put these over here, okay? Because again, physical appearance, especially if we're talking about racial characteristics, sometimes is important, sometimes it's not. When I lived in Japan, everybody knew I wasn't Japanese. All they had to do was look, like, oh my God, he's so big, right? Okay. On the other hand, doesn't work in the opposite way. When Japanese come here, nobody knows they're Japanese, right? In fact, one of the students in the other class was complaining that she said, Americans think all Asians are Chinese. She says, and I'm Japanese, you know, so they can't tell by looking, right? However, certain physical characteristics might tell us something about the culture. And you started to say it, or somebody said it, how you cut your hair, what kind of jewelry you wear, what kind of perfume you wear. That all might be culturally related, and it is physical, so it might tell you something about the culture, right? So, clothing we've already talked about. What about religion? Does religion tell us the culture? Does the culture tell us the religion? Sometimes, yes. That's what I want you to recognize. Religion and culture are two gigantic things that definitely impact each other a great deal, but are not, they are still separate in many ways, right? So, you know, the Catholic Church is the largest Christian church, and you can find Catholics in almost every country of the world, right? And John Paul II, the Pope before this last one, loved to travel. He loved to go to places and meet people and see cultures, and he always tried to speak the language too. He was a very multicultural man, right? But did he come to the United States very often? No. Do you know why? He once said, in America, in the U.S., they are Americans first and Catholics second. And because of his position, he thought they should be Catholics first and Americans second. But he was wrong, because in every country, nationality or ethnic identity is more important than religious identity. There are some countries where they are the same, okay? But there are not very many countries, and those countries are changing very quickly. Because culture is not static, it does change. All right. I'm not a great artist, but this is what we call, let me get this erased here, a cultural model, okay? Can you tell what it's supposed to be? Is my art that bad? You didn't see Titanic? It's an iceberg, thank you very much. It's an iceberg, yeah. This is called the iceberg model of culture, okay? Now, what do you know about icebergs? That's right, the top is the smallest part, the bottom is the biggest part. So, what I'm trying to tell you here is that what we see, the behaviors, is really the smallest part of culture. There's something much more important about culture that we never see, okay? And that is called the values. The values, okay? Now, religion often impacts what values a culture has. Values means, what do we think is important? What do we think is right? What do we think is wrong, okay? And the reason this is important is because values are the basis for our behavior. Okay? They're the basis for our behavior. And we can't see somebody's values. So when we see a behavior that we don't understand, we tend to want to interpret it from our own values, which is the wrong thing to do. That behavior is not based on our own values. It's based on their values, and we don't know what they are. This is the problem with cross-cultural communication. We misunderstand each other because we're coming from a different base, and we don't understand what's happening. Okay. All right, so this is our first model, the iceberg model. And basically it's to show us that there's two parts of culture, the visible part and the invisible part. And the invisible part is the part that is the strongest and most important for us to think about. Right? By the way, what's the number one item selling item of jewelry in the world? the cross. The Christian cross is the #1 item of jewelry sold in the world. Isn't that shocking? Because half of the people who buy them aren't Christian. Why do they buy it? Because Madonna wears it. Because Elvis Presley wore it. Because every rap star and hip-hop star has one that's got diamonds sticking out on it, right? The interesting part is those famous people who wear the cross are probably not very good examples of Christianity, but that's why it has become a non-religious jewelry item, right? So you can't tell religion by looking at someone either, can you? All right, this model is called a general model, okay? A general model, because something is missing here. Can you see what's missing? You are missing. It's called a general model because it's not personal, is it? It's kind of saying, that culture over there. Well, what about me? What about my culture, right? So I'm going to erase this and give you a new model. Has everybody got all this written down? Okay. So where am I going to start with this new model if I want to change it from a general model into a personal model? Where do I have to start? What makes you, you? How many of you have brothers and sisters? And are you exactly like your brother and sister? No. Why not? Same mother, same father, same house, same family, same school. Why are you different? Personality. That's who you are. So this model starts with you in the middle. Your personality. Where did you get your personality? So you guys are all very young. Someday you're going to have families, right? And the most shocking thing that's going to happen to you is when your baby is born and you pick up that young little pink thing and you look at it and you realize, oh my God, it has a personality. Because you are born with your personality. That's why you're different from your brothers and sisters. However, your personality is also molded and changed by those things around you. Yeah.
How you can be influenced by family and friends?
Exactly. Okay, good. So that's where we're going next. The first important effect on your personality, of course, has to be your family. That's who you're with. That's who you're dependent on, you know. So your mother, your father, if you have sisters or brothers that are older than you, you know, they might have added something. So that's right. What comes next after family?
Friends.
Okay, good. So we can use several different words here. We can say friends. Often in the anthropological literature, they use the word peers, but peers just means people that are the same age as you. And where do you find those people? In school. School becomes really, really important, right? In fact, you don't want to hear this, but it's true. As soon as you start going to school, your peers become a more important influence on you than your parents do. I know you want to say, but I love my mom and dad and they're so important to me. Okay, yeah, fine. It's true. But the real impact is coming from your peers, from the people you go to school with, the people you play with, the people in your own neighborhood, right? We can see this in Southern California because we have a lot of immigrant populations here, okay? If someone comes here and chooses to live within an enclave of people from the same place who speak the same language, how do their children speak? With the same accent that their parents have. But if that family comes and chooses to move into a neighborhood where there are English-speaking children for those kids to play with, guess what? They have no accent. They don't speak like their parents. They speak like their friends. It's very clear what can happen at this level, okay? What other kinds of influences can you have on your personality?
Media.
Yes, okay. I'm going to make that a more general thing. I'm just going to call it society in general. And that could be, you know, the media, other things like that. Society could actually also include religion. If you belong to a church and you go to a church group, you know, that has a very important effect on you as well, right? So this is a different kind of model. What are we going to call it? What does it look like?
Tree ring?
It is called the tree ring model of culture. You know, when you cut a tree, that's what you find, these little rings going out, okay? So we have two models of culture today. We have the general model of culture, that's the iceberg, and it shows us the difference between visible and invisible culture, the relationship between behavior and the values that are important. And now we have a personal model of culture, which we call the tree ring model, which shows that although we start with our own personality, we learn our culture from family, friends, peers, society, religion, all of those places. That's what helps to shape us, right? This is kind of a nice look, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Do you think this is a picture of you? Well, I have friends who probably look more like this. What do you think that would mean? What is this the model of? It's a model of culture. There are people who are born with personalities, and that personality doesn't really fit the culture they're born in, right? So even in their own culture, they're considered kind of on the edge. You know, it's like, they're kind of weird, right? Yeah, they're from my place, but they're really odd, you know. They don't fit in the middle of their culture. They fit on the edge of their culture. In fact, this theory was originally proposed by a famous anthropologist, Dr. Sue, who I was lucky enough to know for many years, a wonderful man. And he said that he thought the reason people traveled was because they didn't fit where they were born. Yeah, of course, they had another reason. Oh, I'm going to discover something. I need more business. They had a reason for going, but the real reason was, I don't like it around here so much. I'm going to find some other place. So it's kind of interesting, isn't it? That it's possible that the idea of personality and cultural fit had a lot to do with the fact that human beings have moved all over the world and gone from culture to culture to culture. Let's go back for a minute. We were talking about values. In this model, family, peers, and society, that's how we get our values, okay? In the other one, we had values as the basis for our behavior, which is also true. But I forgot to tell you that values in human societies are basically the same. All cultures value basically the same things. So why is our behavior so different? If the things we value are the same, why do we act and behave so differently? So the word to solve that problem that you need to write down is priorities, right? Priorities means to rate something first, second, third, fourth. So let me give you an example. Family, self. Those are two things that are often important in cultures, okay? I know you've only been here a short time, but which one do you think Americans think is more important? Is it self or is it family? Self. It's definitely self. That's easy to see, isn't it? Okay? How many of you are from cultures where family is more important? Quite a few of you, okay? So what does that mean? Does that mean Americans don't care about families? No, it means they do care about families, right? Does that mean the other cultures don't care about the self? No. So we have to remember in terms of priorities that I like to think of it as in terms of balance, right? I've got family on this side, I've got self on this side. Both of these things are very important to me. But I live in a place where family is just a little bit more important, okay? Or I live in a place where self is more important. They're still both there. I still have the same value, but I put them in a different weight. I put them in a different priority, okay? And I think this is the hardest thing for us to understand when we talk to people from other cultures, is what is their priority of values and why is it that way? Right? I have a very, very close friend. Actually, it's Dr. Sue's granddaughter, and she's an anthropologist too. And we were talking, and I said something about, well, I understand that family is most important in Chinese culture. And she looked at me and she said, no, you don't. And I said, what? And she said, you may understand intellectually that in Chinese culture family is more important, but you do not understand with your heart that family is more important, and you never will. Because you were born in a culture that has the opposite impact, okay? So that's very important for us to understand, right? We can do our best to understand people, but there's always going to be a level of feeling that we're not going to be able to touch. So we have to understand that we'll do our best, but other people may not be able to understand us. Okay? Culture is. You see this one? Culture is our way of communicating. We talked about that, verbal and nonverbal, right? Our appearance and style of dress is a part of it, but not quite the way we thought it was. What, when, and how we eat, we talked about that. Those are things that we can see pretty easily, right? Notice there's a little line there. 4, 5, and 6. Commitment to time schedules, how much space we like around us, our relationship with others and authority. We sometimes can see that, and other times we don't see that, right? And then the last one's at the bottom. Sense of self, our place in society, our relationship with nature and the supernatural. Those are things which we probably never see unless we actually talk about people with those things, right? So this is a list of things going from visible to invisible, okay? Do you understand the time schedule thing? I have a friend who works for Siemens Corporation. Do you know that corporation? It's a big German multinational corporation. He works in Brazil. And in their company, they have American workers, Brazilian workers, and German workers, right? They understand this is a problem. So when somebody says, I'll see you on Tuesday at 11 o'clock, they immediately say, is that Brazilian time, American time, or German time? They recognize it's a problem, and they talk about it directly, right? Because those three cultures have a different idea about time, okay? Germans come on time, exactly. Americans come early, and Brazilians come late. So you need to specify, okay? All right, if you look on the back, here's another list of cultural facts. I think number 8 is something I need to explain. I think the rest of them you can get pretty easily. Real and ideal, okay? We can relate that back to the iceberg model. The real would be behavior, and the ideal would be the value. So, for instance, one of the more important values for Americans is the idea of equality. That's really important in our culture. And yet, every day in American society, you see a number of examples of inequality, right? Does that mean that's not a real value? It's not true? Yes, it's still a true value. We still think that's really important. But we also have that contradiction of behavior. And you can find that contradiction between value and behavior in every culture. In every culture, if you look carefully enough, you'll find some area where there's a disconnect between the value. But that doesn't mean they're both not important. That's why I said real and ideal. Both are a part of culture. Look at the very last one here. This is our conclusion for today. Cultural fluency and intercultural communication are essential skills in today's global economic reality. And I think that's probably why most of you are here, right? Because you recognize having another language fluently gives you an advantage for any kind of career or job that you want. Because that's the direction that we're going in, so. And I'm here to try to make the transition as easy as possible. Because it isn't easy, is it? Sometimes you just think, what is going on here? Right? Why do they do that? Why do they say those things, right? And that's exactly what we're going to talk about next week. So stay tuned. Next week we're going to talk about cultural adjustment. All right?